Good afternoon, everybody. We certainly appreciate you joining this edition of an Eden webinar, professional development webinar, sponsored by Extension Foundation and our Extension Disaster Education Network Professional Development Committee. Today, we've got speakers that are going to talk about how Extension responded to Hurricane Helene in the state of North Carolina. We're having extension specialists and agents from North Carolina State University providing the information. And then we'll also have an extension specialist from Texas talk about how they came over and supported search and rescue operations as part of an EMAC or an Emergency Management Assistance Compact. So I want to turn it over to our friends over in North Carolina and Dr. Mike Yoder. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Monty. Pleasure to be with you this afternoon, and it's a real pleasure to have some of my colleagues here to visit with you. I'm gonna talk very little, but I did want to kind of introduce this disaster because this is one we've never seen before, and we're kind of used to hurricanes here in the state, but we're not used to hurricanes having the impact or anywhere near the impact they do, especially when they impact Western North Carolina. This is a different approach for us. We worked closely with the Department of Agriculture, and based on the time of year and the fact that our Department of Agriculture has about 300 open positions right now, there was a lot that they were not going to be able to do for this disaster that they've been able to do in the past. And so Extension was actually asked to step up and manage donation or take care of donation management, primarily in terms of livestock feed and hay and fencing materials and that type of thing. And so you're going to hear from others today that we did that, but we did so much more as well, and I know they'll speak to that as well. I will tell you this, I've never been more proud of a group of people than I have been. North Carolina Cooperative Extension, we appreciate all they've done. And Monty, I want to say we appreciate you sending a team to North Carolina. We tried to get a couple more, but it was an interesting response in terms of, while this storm was not a typical hurricane and not even I know there's no such thing as a typical disaster, but it wasn't a typical disaster in North Carolina. There was the response had to be entirely different than we've ever done in the past. So I'm gonna quit there, and I'm going to turn this over to Jerry Moody, who's our county extension director in Avery County. And Avery County really stepped up in a huge way for this disaster. And when I say that all disasters are local, I know you've heard that before, but you're going to hear just how local these disasters were and why Extension was the perfect organization to step up and fill the roles that we did. So Jerry, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay. You've seen some of the pictures we have up here, and basically on Wednesday evening, September 25th, my emergency management guy called me. My office is 120 feet elevated above the rest of the town. And in the 2004, the last 1,000-year flood, it was the only spot that didn't get flooded. So this time around, we had my building and community center up here. He called me about 11:30 on the Wednesday the 25th and asked me to get my office ready for to be a shelter. At 4:30 that morning, he called me back and said, "No, you're going to be the EOC because the county administration office was completely flooded. And before the hurricane even hit, we had 19 inches dropped in our county." So the EOC was located in my office, and I joke and say, since I'm a fat boy and I enjoy food, they put me in charge of getting all the food and water once all this thing hit. The true thing is that my wife works at the local food line, which is a local grocery store, and she had the keys to get in, and I had the truck, so we were able to go there and get all the water and Little Debbie's and stuff like that to start the donations coming in. Since my office was set up as an EOC, I have my own generator and I have my own alternative power source. The only thing we didn't have was an alternative communications. All of our, by 10:30 Friday morning, all of our communications went down when the gust of wind hit. My office where it's located at, I experienced about 30 days of 100-mile-an-hour winds, and the winds we were experiencing that day were far above that. We had complete straight line winds where trees snapped down, and we had tornadic winds where the trees were everywhere. By that afternoon and on Saturday, we already began trying to organize a recovery effort, and my staff came in and was part of the whole situation. They were helping out wherever they could. I was running the donations, trying to get those organized. My livestock agent, she did a fantastic job at the one of our warehouses, and Avery County only has 2 warehouses. And both of them are quite small, only 6,000 square feet in one, about 50,000 in the other one. And so we were able to secure those through the county and put ag supplies at one and human supplies at the same location, and then human supplies at an alternative location. We've lost, just sort of give you an idea of the losses. We had a meeting with about 5 of my largest growers, and between those 5 growers, we lost $30 million. Our timber is gone. One of my largest guys he runs a timber operation, and he has lost the next 5 years worth of timber sales. The next problem that we're facing, and I think it needs to be addressed, is the firestorms that are going to happen next year, because all of our access roads to our forest, both private and public, are both gone at this point in time. We've lost actual land, we've lost people, we've lost homes, we've lost roads. After when we started recovering, we got an operation thing called Save Christmas, where we were able to triage with the Department of Transportation, and we were able to get 5 roads that can handle 18 wheelers, because we sell between 750,000 to 1.2 million trees for Christmas trees out of here a year. And we were able to get with the DOT and get them to secure roads and get contractors in to refurbish roads. I was able to get 4 bridges for 4 different growers who could not access their trees. And there's the back view of my office right there, and the winds came up and snapped it. So it was a more than I grew up in Florida, so I'm used to hurricanes, but I've not seen anything like this. The number of sinkholes, we probably have 300 or 400 landslides, like you see in that picture there. We have fields that I don't know whether guys can get in because of landslides. We've probably lost between 150 and 175,000, maybe up to 200,000 trees, actual gone, where they got swallowed up by the landslide. This was a complete effort, though, from the National Guard through all the departments within the county, including Extension, and it was a group effort. And again, we stepped up because we needed to. One of the take-home messages that we've learned is that we need ham radios. We need amateur radios, because at 10:30 Friday morning, we lost all communication. All of our cell towers, all of our Vipers, everything went down. We were unable to communicate outside because of the loss of signals and because of all the power being shot down. And so we were, for about 72 hours, it was iffy to be able to talk to anyone outside. And actually for about 15 hours, we were locked in to the, we couldn't get out of our office because all the roads were either blocked, submerged, or missing. We're just now at the point we got the National Guard till November 15th, and they're helping us with getting all the supplies to distribution centers. We had about 45 distribution centers, because every church and every fire department started collecting donations. And so now we've organized it back down to about 3 or 4 different distribution centers. We're allowing the fire departments to continue until they decide they don't want to do anymore. But again, this is my third 1,000-year flood since I've been here, and I really don't want to see another one. On a personal note, for 2 days, I thought my son was dead because the road he would have traveled home on was missing, and I could not get up with him. And the every safety check we did, they said, "Oh, he left 2 days ago." So it was quite an emotional 3 or 4 days until we found him, and it's still even emotional now as I speak about it. And this is the road coming down from my office right here. This is about 11 o'clock on Friday. So it was pretty impressive. So that's all I can think of, other than, it'd be the Starlinks saved us. We got 40 or 50 Starlinks donated. We were able to put those out. We were able to get communication out there and talk to these more rural areas, more cutoff areas, more mountainous areas. But that and ham radios, I think, would have helped us out tremendously. Is there anything else you'd like for me to say, Mike?
No, I think that's a great start. Jerry, I appreciate you being open and honest about this. This is, I want people to understand that this was a personal storm where it really impacted our people as well as the rest of the people in their communities. And that's why we just greatly appreciate all the work you guys have done. Maybe if we have some time at the end, we'll open it up for questions, but let's go to Holly Jordan in Buncombe County. Holly, you want to share what your experience has been and what your response within the county has been over the past month?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay? I was having to switch around my AirPods. I'm Holly Jordan. I'm the County Extension Director here in Buncombe. And Buncombe is Asheville, Swannanoa, Fairview, Barnardsville, Arden, all of those areas. And so typically when you hear about the response, I think a lot of times with it, had the largest city in Western North Carolina, Asheville, not been included, it pains me that there may not have been the response with donations and support had it been further west or had it been in more of those rural areas. And that was one of the things that we were dealing with here, is that after the storm, all of the donations were coming to Asheville, and we were finding that they were not going to Yancey, Mitchell, Avery, Madison counties. And so that was one of the things that we tried to do here in our office, was communicate so that the donations were getting to some of those more rural counties. Jerry, I didn't realize you were from Florida and had been through hurricanes, but that's where I grew up. And so I've been through lots of hurricanes, and this was beyond anything I have ever seen or experienced. And that's Andrew. My family went through Ian a couple years ago, and this is it's unimaginable. And the pictures that you're seeing just don't do justice to what it looks like when you're on the ground. You see this little snapshot and it looks awful, but then when you're there in person, it's everywhere. It's all around you. So I will say here in Buncombe County, Extension falls under a department called Ag and Land Resources with our soil and water conservation. And the county, we're certainly a partner with the county, but they did not reassign us an extension to other duties like they were doing with all of the other county employees. So because of that extension here, we became the face of ag. And so if anybody had ag questions, they were coming directly to us. We were lucky that we had a couple staff members who had gone away for the weekend. And so they were in Charlotte. We had someone in Charlotte. We had somebody further west in Silva. And luckily, they still had some service. But those of us here, like Jerry mentioned, we had no cell phone service. That was the most uncomfortable thing, was not being able to communicate. That and looking at the mountains and it being pitch black because there wasn't power anywhere. And so that was pretty wild. Right after the storms, of course, we tried to reach out as best we could using those staff members who were not in Western North Carolina at the time to reach out to our Master Gardener volunteers, our 4-H families. They were posting on our social media and sending emails out. One of the things that we found was that emails, we used a system called Active Campaign, and it's got wonderful pictures and header pictures and all of this, but those don't load when you have very limited service. And so we had to go back to just normal word emails to try to get the messages and information out. After our staff, again, they're wonderful. I never had to direct anyone to do anything because everybody just picked up and did what needed to be done. And in a situation like this, it doesn't matter if you're helping one person get water or if you're helping 200 people with something. It did not matter. Every little bit of help mattered. So we had staff that were working at distribution sites because our office was not a distribution site. We helped set up a couple of points of distribution, like in Barnardsville, at community centers, which we've worked with really closely. And that was just working with the communities to do that. Like I mentioned, as some of those donation sites were getting inundated with supplies, we were transporting those, whether it was by our vehicles, once we could, because like Jerry mentioned, a lot of roads were out, a lot of tree damage on roads, but once we could, we started getting those to other counties. We worked with, our livestock agent worked with the WNC Regional Livestock Center, which is here in Canton. Sally will probably talk about this, but that is where a lot of donations of hay and livestock feed were coming. And so we were figuring out drop points for those supplies. And it was really interesting because I've never had the National Guard call me asking me where I need supplies airlifted to. Excuse me. But I think Dr. Yoder had given some phone numbers out. And so we were working with the National Guard to make those happen. We also started working as local organizations started developing grants and getting the word out. We worked with WNC Communities and ASAP and a couple of other places that had grants. And so we were trying to get that information out. And again, like Jerry said, the Starlinks, people did not have access to the internet. And so while some of it was popping up, around the city as the weeks went on, we still have areas that have no service. And so those Starlinks have been wonderful. We dealt a lot of the questions had to deal with toxicity of soil and water. And so we worked with the university and Dr. Yoder and other administrations set up strike teams to come out. And so the soils department came out and they did some soil testing. And so we worked with farmers to coordinate that. It was just, we passed out a lot of PPE. Our 4-H program, we ended up doing some little booths with pumpkin painting, which was wonderful because while we were giving the kids an opportunity to just have some normalcy, we could meet with their parents and ask them answer questions they had about water and food safety, mold removal in their homes, things like that. And I did want to mention that here in Asheville, we lost power. And then as that came on, but our entire water system here in Asheville it got decimated. And so I joke, we drink out of chicken stock boxes, but we do not have potable water here. And so a lot of our questions that we've been answering have been related to water and how to wash dishes. Is it safe to bathe in the water? Is it safe to water plants and herbs in your home garden with the water that's in our system now? They've gotten the water up, but the turbidity levels in the reservoir are preventing it from being potable. They're shocking it. They're doing all kinds of things. But they're hoping by mid-December, we can actually be able to drink our water again, which has had impacts on all of the businesses. They've had to open up on limited menus, if at all. A lot of places aren't opening back up. But yeah, I mean, I'll just say, It's been wild. It's been really wild. We have had to pivot our complete focus, and just there's a lot of questions, a lot of unknowns. And as extension agents, it was really uncomfortable for us to tell people we did not have answers for them. And I think that this is one of those situations where we definitely depend on the network across the country, because we don't deal with mudslides like this very often, where other states might. And just the hurricane, yeah, just that information, it's been wild. I don't know how to describe it. So Dr. Yoder, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Holly. You've done a phenomenal job there in Buncombe County, and we greatly appreciate it. Holly talked about soil being tested. That was where there was soil. This is the first time I've ever seen a situation where the topsoil was completely wiped away, not just buried, but gone, probably in the Tennessee Valley, maybe even the Mississippi River. And that is one of our biggest challenges today, is how do you replace something that took 1,000 years to develop, maybe 2,000? I'm going to turn this over to Sally Dixon, who's our County Extension Director in Haywood County. And Haywood County has been running one of our hay and feed distribution centers. Sally, you want to take it?
Yeah, so thanks everybody for getting on the Zoom today, or I guess listening to the recording. I'm, like Dr. Yoder said, I'm Sally Dixon. I'm the Extension Director in Haywood County, and this is our 4th flood in the last 20 years. So like Jerry alluded to, we had 2 in 2004. I remember being a kid during those. And we also had a flash flood through Crusoe in 2021 from Tropical Storm Fred. And really, thankfully, that has helped a lot of what we've done in the county, because when you go through an incident like that, we really bolstered our emergency management plans as a county government. And some of the fruits of that labor have really shown through during this event. One of those was that last year, all of our county department heads, we were strongly encouraged / kind of forced to go to a FEMA training here in Haywood County. We ran through the whole EOC protocol, where it would be, what would happen under different parameters, who was in charge of different things. And so that really helped in this incident. I drew the very fortunate straw of being the ag person on the FEMA ICS plan for the county. I also thought joining the fairgrounds board would be a fantastic thing to do about a year ago, and all of those convened into this event. So, with our response, like, Jerry mentioned, and I know Holly had stuff on her website as well, started before the storm. We were actually supposed to have our county fair here the weekend of the storm, which we didn't get to do, but the exhibit hall was 100% put together, judged with ribbons and everything, because we didn't know if the storm would fizzle out or not. So we were prepared for all contingencies. So I think at 6 p.m. on Thursday before the storm, I was up here at the fairgrounds finishing the exhibit hall and tending to the chicks that were hatching. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't go very far without eggs hatching during some kind of an event. So we have chicks that were born during the storm. But before everything got started, we had articles on the website. Our county PIO has been fantastic of getting things on Facebook. And so, our response started there kind of on the 26th of September, making sure people knew to move their livestock to higher ground, to go ahead and start taking records, because the more records you have, the easier it is to deal with crop insurance and FEMA and Farm Service Agency and just the whole litany of government acronyms. It was an interesting day, to say the least. I've got staff who were out in the field in the middle of the flood trying to help farmers, and then my road flooded, so I couldn't go anywhere. Anyone who knows me on a personal level knows that that's probably the worst case scenario for me. I don't like to sit still, and I don't like to not be able to do anything. And then the internet and the power went out, so I just had to sit at home, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was just me, so then I was convinced everyone else probably thought I had dropped off the planet. My mom's road flooded as well, and she doesn't quite know how cell phones function, so she didn't text me before the cell phones went out. So that Friday, I'd like to not go through that again, because I spent the whole day not knowing if any of my friends or family were okay. Other than I'd seen one Facebook video before the internet went out of like one road down from my mom's house that was underwater, and I was like, well, this is a fun time for all. She's fine. Her house is fine. Her neighbor's not so much, but that 3 feet elevation gain between her house and the rest of the road helped a little bit, but it wasn't a good situation for anyone who lives near her. The second I woke up on Saturday, I forded the river, metaphorically speaking. I didn't drive through water. You're not supposed to do that. I did like drive kind of over a power pole that had fallen down to go check on people, make sure that we were good to go, because you couldn't call anyone. So the best way to figure out where everyone is in Haywood County is to just go find them. So, I spent a lot of time driving around, checking on the fairgrounds. That's when we got the first understanding that our fairgrounds here in the county was going to be a distribution center. And I picked a great year to be on the fairgrounds board as the extension director. Well, that was the perfect timing. So I've been up here. That's where I'm at right now. For the past several weeks, we've handled all of the things. Water, clothes, MREs, heaters, generators. At some point in the middle of the storm, the sheriff's department started putting hay down on the arena, and there was no plan, no structure. So Extension was able to really step in and provide some structure for that. And we have a covered horse arena that seats like 1,500 people. So we've been very fortunate to be able to like store hay and other supplies
I'm
there.
listening to a national extension
because it's
disaster webinar. They're
able
talking about what happened in North
have
Carolina.
rain
Can
hit
somebody
the
mute
hay
their
and stuff
mic?
like that. So we're really fortunate to have that resource. Not every county has access to that. So we've had that. Our biggest thing, other than having to hang out at this fairgrounds with all of the fun National Guard folks, I've made a lot of friends. I got to unload water off of Chinook helicopter, which sounds horrible when you say it in context, but at the time you're like, well, this is pretty great. We didn't know what was going on for the first week. So I think there was a moment like Sunday or Monday after the storm where we were up here at the fairgrounds and the helicopter flew in, and someone was like, it's really weird that they didn't just drive that in, because we didn't know the interstates were closed. And the damage on I-40 is it's something to behold. There's you really can't, the pictures don't do the damage justice. There's whole farms that wash down the river. There's hay, dead livestock. I mean, there's acre chunks out of pastures that just don't exist anymore. The river's 20 feet wider in some places. There's a new island in the middle of the Pigeon River running through Crabtree. You can see pictures of the Waterville Dam where we're at in Haywood County. Up towards the northern part of the county, there's a big dam that provides hydroelectric power, then sends the water down in Cook County, Tennessee. And it's the pictures of that, of the amount of trees and everything back behind that dam. We made a definite deposit of topsoil into the Mississippi River Delta, but just the damage people are dealing with, the human needs, right? So our farmers are really hard hit, but we've got people that are living in tents. Mountain people are very resilient and very prideful in the same sense. So we're dealing with folks who are trying to figure out their best living situation, but they don't want to leave their property. And that gets kind of hard sometimes when you have to deal with kind of the human aspect of people just in a bad situation that you really would like to prevent, and you can't all the time. But we've been doing a lot of things. I set 3 priorities, for our staff, and one of them was to be a physical presence in the community and go and help, whatever that is. To connect with our clientele, and then also just to get information out. So we got out about 400 4-H activity kits that involve mental health activities. We've been able to just reach out and be a presence in this county. And I think that that's the most important thing, is that, you know, we serve our community. We're paid by our community, and we have a calling to serve the people here. So I'm proud of what we've done. I'd love to never go through this again, but I know that might not be the most realistic outlook upon that. I think it's more preparing for the next time. But on a positive note, there are chicks hatching right now at the fairgrounds in a bathroom where the incubator is, so that we can restock people's flocks. So in true fashion, they are. I saw some hatch this morning, so I know they're down there. But that's where we've been.
All right, thank you, Sally. Some of you may have had your interest piqued. You hear people talking about being assigned by their county. In North Carolina, our county personnel, the extension personnel, in a disaster situation actually fall under the county emergency manager. So it's the county emergency manager who often assigns extension personnel as they're needed within the county. I know that's a little different than it may be in some states. So, and I want to just say thank you for having us today. And I want to turn this over to Scott McCollum, because Scott handles a lot of our communications during disasters. And Scott, what do you have to share with us?
Well, I really don't have near as much as what the folks have already talked, because they were really on the ground. And sometimes I feel like I'm disconnected here in Raleigh, but I think what we do, one of the things that we do put together is we have our NC Disaster Information Center, which is a website, a web portal that we have where our specialists share information both for the public and for our agents. And we had about 40 different articles and things that were posted over the month of October related to the storm. And you can just see a little bit of that here. You know, realizing that this storm, and you have already heard it, that communication was one of the biggest obstacles. And, you know, I mean, Holly even mentioned some people still are almost without communication. Fortunately, I work in an IT group here that supports our extension offices. And fortunately, for the most part, within just a couple of days, most of our extension offices had power and had internet back in their offices. A couple of exceptions. I think Jerry there in Avery was still using Starlink, but so our offices ended up getting the power. And as a matter of fact, I was able to tell Holly that they had internet back in their office and they still weren't able to get to their office. So that was kind of interesting. But we really work with, try to work with our counties and with our specialists so we can share information. And I've got a whole notepad of notes and ideas of things that we could do better, or maybe we could do different next time. And so I think anytime you have a disaster, they're, like we say, they're all local, they're all different. But I think a lot of things we can learn, we can use going forward. So that's really all I'm going to say, because I think, Mike, you wanted to wrap up with just a few other things, and I'll just turn it back to you.
I think I've pretty much said all I need to say. I just want to thank Jerry and Holly and Sally and you, Scott, for joining us and contributing here. And Monty, I'll turn it back to you.
You bet. Great job. Appreciate all y'all are doing and what y'all did in North Carolina. And I know I tell folks, you're going to meet people on their very worst day, but you're going to be the light that gives them hope to make it to the next day. So thank y'all for all y'all done for the folks in North Carolina. I'm going to turn it over now to Bryan Davis. Bryan Davis is an area chief in what we call our Disaster Assessment and Recovery Unit. He serves South Texas. He's been on several deployments here in Texas and also out of state in what we'd call an EMAC situation. He and Zach Schaefer are going to talk about how our team, working with our vet emergency team out of the A&M Vet School, went to North Carolina to work in search and rescue operations there. So I'm going to turn it over to Bryan and Zach.
Okay, Monty, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Zach, let's test your speakers too.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
All right.
Let me go ahead and try to share our screen. Dr. Dozier, can you
Looks
see that
good.
flag? Excellent. Once again, thank y'all very much for giving us the opportunity to kind of tell our part of the story during our deployment there in Western North Carolina. We started discussions shortly there, October the 1st, leaving out on October the 2nd. We were asked to work with, through an EMAC agreement with North Carolina, going and supporting the USAR search and rescue canines that were in mission and going on during this time. We work with our partners here at Texas A&M, the veterinary emergency team, made up of Dr. Deborah Zoran. She is also a USAR veterinarian, has worked many years there, and we were asked by the state to come up and support in working logistics, kind of bringing our expertise, veterinarians, vet technicians, and then also our trailers, strike team trailers, to be able to work and keep these canines kind of in the mission and being able to do the search and rescues. First of all, kind of towards the end of the lifeline canines and transitioning into the HR canines that are working up there. We do a lot of driving and tasking that, a lot of safety concerns, and y'all know your climate. We kind of have a task and safety concern there as we pull a lot of those larger trailers into there, and then work as a force multiplier with these vet teams, and then also force protection as needed there. And that's kind of rounding up our objectives. I'm gonna have Zach kind of talk about where we were asked to come into.
So if you take a look here, I know that we operate out of Western North Carolina. The folks from North Carolina just presented kind of offered a more focused view on where we operate out of, but just serving the vet team here. In terms of logistics, before we even got into the mountains, something to consider is that we went from College Station, Texas, all the way over to Cherokee, North Carolina, on a took 2 days to travel there. And it was pretty flat for the beginning, but towards the end there, as we approached the Blue Ridge Mountains, that's when we kind of used a lot of our logistic knowledge within the team. I used to live in far west Texas, so for me, my point of reference for mountains is driving a desert flat, going up a mountain, getting into Sky Island, dropping back down, and then driving another 2 hours on a desert flat and up and down. But I'm sure North Carolina folks can attest to this. Once we went up into the mountains here, it was up and down and curvy, and when we're taking all these trailers and these trucks and personnel, the first thing I was thinking about mostly is I was kind of like a kid in a doctor's office when it comes to hauling that equipment. I don't know what it does, but don't touch it, but take care of it, type of thing, right? Because a lot of the time that equipment in there needs to be protected. So taking into account curvy roads, road closures, I mean, that was probably the bigger things and challenges that we encountered while running logistics, even though we operated out of those 3 locations, protecting personnel and keeping those trucks and trailers safe, or everybody safe, is one thing to take into consideration. Okay, next slide, please. This kind of offers a more focused view on where we're at. So from October 4th to October 11th, this is how we were set up. We had a base of operations out of Cherokee. We were staged in the casino parking lot there. And then we had 2 strike teams going out, operating at a FOB, or a forward operating base. One was out of Burnsville and the other was out of Asheville. So the one thing we were thinking about is time. With all the road closures and the power outages and everything that had been described by North Carolina folks in the presentation, we had to think about a way to service all of those search and rescue operations, as well as how to get there. And so our furthest operating forward operating base was out at Burnsville, and that was about 3 hours there, 3 hours back. And I know that on the line here, it kind of looks like we did a straight shot, but that's going into Asheville, winding up those roads on top of limited travel times. That was that was kind of in terms of personnel safety. We want to think about how we can get up there, get back. We were operating, leaving in the dark, coming home in the dark. And I know Bryan can offer a little more perspective on that. I was one of the teams that had operated at Asheville, one of the strike teams. We were going an hour there in the morning and an hour back. You know, that's how we usually operated until, and when we were in, let me just say for them that went to Burnsville, they were in the mountain training facility up there for the North Carolina Forest Service, and then also out of the Mountain Heritage High School up there. And then when we were operating at Asheville, we were in the Best Buy parking lot just south of the Asheville Mall there. And one of the pictures that Bryan has on one of those earlier slides has pictures of Connex boxes stacked up. Ride down that road was kind of no man's land for us because we didn't go beyond that point. But a lot of the pictures that you've seen so far are kind of what was beyond that point that we didn't happen to see. And then on the 12th, we actually moved all the operations through the 16th, 12th through the 16th. We moved all of our operations over to Burnsville. We operate out of Mountain Heritage High School. And so this just offers a little bit more perspective on where we were with the vet team and as well as traveling distances. All right, next slide.
Yeah, and as what's already been talked about a little bit, as the event hit and how large it was, for us here in Texas, we've had a smaller event about 8 years ago in Central Texas, where we had a tremendous flood event that hit kind of a similar type area where a lot of flooding along a river. A lot of families had lived, and several fatalities from that standpoint. So for me, it was kind of a point of reference. Also working with these veterinarians in the area, as you can kind of see the picture there on the far left. That's there in Asheville. That was a secure area whenever we first got there. That first day on the 4th, I was with that strike team that went into that area. There were several Missouri task force that was actually working that Best Buy parking lot, set up the fob there, and then was doing a lot of decon with the task force teams that were in there and the handlers. They actually had that time about 8 HR canines and their handlers working there. A lot of devastation with our teams. We worked throughout the from the 2nd through the 19th with we had different team members come in and transfer out, a couple of veterinarians as well as technicians. For the DAR members themselves, we were very consistent with 3 Extension AgriLife DAR members the whole time. But we were a very small team as a task force, but then breaking up into strike teams. Most of our strike teams consisted of 3 to 4 individuals during a time. As the agents had said in North Carolina, these are some pictures that I had taken as we were going through Burnsville and on up to the North Carolina training facility. We went up there one day where we worked with the New York Task Force Canine Search and Rescue canines in that area. And the picture on the far left, that debris pile that you see there, it looks like a small little debris pile. That one right there is about the size of a 2-story house. And so you had these search and rescue canines that would literally be tasked with working around those piles. Some of those canines would work through those piles. If they got on a hit, if there was a hit, they would send in a search and rescue team to start delayering it. This is kind of a typical day in our operation. These canines, a lot of them are what they call Malcrosses or Malinois. They're all different types. These are tremendous operators, and they are treated with the utmost respect through our teams. The canines, this one canine here is one that we actually worked on there in Asheville. His actually left front leg had a previous day, he had fallen within a debris pile through some mud and sand, and a lot of the times these dogs were working in along that riverbank, and it would be sand on mud on top, and then they'd fall through into the sand. He had actually had a 6-inch laceration to his left leg, and then his right leg that day. Actually, he had fallen again and ripped his right paw, and we had to take off one of his pads, fix him up, tape him back up, decon him. We did send him out for that day, the rest of the day. That came in at noon, and then he was actually back in operation for about 10 days after that, as he covered and kept working that situation. But if you're looking at the center picture, this is us actually working within one of our medic trailers. We came up there, we had 7 units, and then of course 3 of them were mobile veterinary response units. And so what you have here, you have 1 veterinarian, you actually have 2 technicians working with that handler and the canine on the ground. Then you also see the 2 individuals in the camouflage. Those are actually DEA, LE law enforcement. That is, they were actually medics that treated that dog there in the field. A lot of the task force teams that are working there were working with law enforcement around them out in the field. And those DEA medics had done the initial triage, and then wound up coming in and kind of saw the case through, and we were able to kind of help teach them a little bit more about, instead of human medicine, a little bit about working with these search and rescue canines. All total, that were in the area where we were at, and we were servicing over 20 of the task forces from different states. When we first got there, there were over 80 canine teams. These are FEMA teams that we were, through our request, was to work with the FEMA canine teams that were tasked. Of those, 48 were HR and 32 were live find. But what's unique of the 48 HR teams there, 36 of them have been requested through the state of North Carolina as a single resource. So what that is that's typically a canine and a handler that gets sent in there, and those 36 single resources, that was our primary objective, was to service those teams, those single resource teams, because a lot of those didn't have a task force that they were attached to there. And we worked with, also I had another veterinarian, FEMA veterinarian. The picture over there on the far left, that is the Missouri State Task Force 1 that had come in midday. We actually had a call, and where that there was some concern with force protection for some FEMA first responders. So came in and had to take off all their outfits that had the FEMA patch on them. And so through the whole time that we were there, from the 2nd through, or from the 4th through the 17th, left out on the 17th, we saw 106 canine cases that we actually worked with through our unit there. I'll go ahead and turn it back to Zach.
So this slide right here kind of sums up what we were doing on the strike team as we were sent down to Asheville or to Burnsville. And this is something that I kind of created to show where we were operating out of that Best Buy parking lot for the FOB. So a daily operations, first thing we do, and I meant to add it, but fuel generators, trucks, and drive. I mean, the diesel, especially in any disaster situation, you don't know where you're going to get fuel from. And so before we left Cherokee, we'd always run by the fuel depot there and grab diesel, make sure the generators were fueled up. And that's the very first thing we would do for the operation. And then obviously drive. And driving on paper is always so easy, but with the equipment, it was something to consider, going up and down and around, and making sure everybody's safe. That's something also to consider as we operate. As soon as we would, in this example, went to Asheville, in that little part that has the vet med mobile unit, we backed up the unit, and then we would organize it and make sure everybody was ready to operate when we started seeing those dogs. And then for the DAR folks that were assisting the vet team, we might be, operate trucks and trailers. If there's we want to take whatever weight we can off of the vet team. So in the case they're looking at dogs and something needs to be moved, whether it's a truck or a trailer, we can be there to do that. Scribing is one of the bigger things we might do. We can write to take a lot of the patient's information down, the dogs, the handlers, what task force they're with, because that goes into a database, and so they can keep a record of who they're seeing on a daily basis. And that helps because then those folks that are the trained vets and the trained vet techs, they can operate working with their patient. And then on top of that, we can just be there to have that extra support. Handling supplies, in some cases, the vet techs want you handling some of the supplies, some of the medicines, and kind of being a gopher between what they might need as they serve those patients. Directing handler traffic, that's something that becomes an issue as they get busier in the mornings and the afternoon when the dogs are going out. Being able to say, hey, talk to some of those clientele and say, hey, get the information right now from them, whether it's the dog or the handler, so we can start moving it smoothly and having a good flow. And the last thing that became more of an issue is force protection. As you notice here in this parking lot, LE or law enforcement is kind of at the tail end here, but as it kind of began to wind down in Asheville, task force guys were being moved. A lot of the crews that were there initially were being either staged in other parts of the theater or moving out. And so we would go there on a daily basis, and there was I think it was an afternoon one of the days, we had a lot of the rest of the personnel, part of the operation, basically leave the parking lot and go be staged somewhere else. And we were left, it was us and then maybe law enforcement and a few other people. So in terms of the tail end, they started bringing more law enforcement to look after our team and make sure that we were safe. And being a part of the vet team, our unit can help out with a little bit of security, keeping your eyes open, maintain situational awareness, and kind of be there for folks. Last is probably by the end of the day, we'd clean the mobile unit. When I was a county agent, I'd always tell 4-Hers, clean workspace, clean headspace type of thing. So as soon as we did that, we could help everybody keep working, everything's clean. And then when we wake up the next day, we're ready for the next task at hand. The other daily activities I kind of mentioned was just ensuring safety for ourselves and the vet team. We want to allow them to operate freely with as much safety as we can, and then clean and maintain trucks and mobile unit. And then if you just take a look at this sorry, can you go back 1 second? I forgot to talk about the parking lot. So if you're just looking at here, this is all the personnel that was within there. We had the task force guys on one side, law enforcement running security. We had a command trailer, the DMORT crew, decon was in another corner. It just kind of became a tight little space to operate, but we made it work and it worked out well. Okay, next slide, please. Some of the key personal takeaways, and the more I look at this slide, I'm like, man, it came off a little more abrasive than I thought, especially when I was talking with DAR folks. But just to hit on a few things that I learned, kind of understanding the individual role with the context of the objective. These are trained veterinarians from the vet school, trained vet techs. I might have a background in animal science, but it's definitely not enough to not be a liability if we're handling too many things. So I want to say from my own personal point of reference, when we're serving the vet team, it's just kind of sitting there and saying, what would you like us to, how do you fulfill it? And like I said, it might be scribing, might be working with, getting some hands-on experience with some of those dogs, but ultimately helping them and everybody fulfilling their individual role helps everybody to operate congruently within the mission, so we can all be thorough about our work. Second one is be patient with as team dynamic changes. I'm sure as we go through disasters, that happens all the time. That helped us because you're going to have a different job task each day. I don't know why I said be completely self-aware. We're human and we make mistakes, but just being self-aware while interacting with all clientele, whether it's the handlers that bring in those dogs, but also aside from that, towards the end of the week, when we had some task force folks move out in Asheville, we did notice a lot of foot traffic there. And so when folks start asking questions about the situation, none of us really have a huge eagle eye of the whole situation. We're operating within our own little tunnel there. So we want to make sure that we are frank. We're not saying too much. And then on top of that, we also have, you know, PIO officers that take care of that sort of thing too. So that's something to keep in mind. Don't be afraid to express concerns, whether it might be like, whether we might be fatigued or tired. It can cause a mental health issue. We want to make sure like to express somebody, hey, I'm feeling, whether it might be equipment, it might be personal well-being. We want to make sure that we're expressing those concerns. So as we move through the mission, I know one thing I tried to do is check in with folks on a mental health level and be like, how are you doing? Do you want to talk? If you feel like talking somewhere else aside from the group, just let me know. And I mean, it goes both ways too. I know by day 10, I was a little bit burnt out too. I know Sean definitely helped me through it. Bryan did too. And then once we moved out of Asheville, I felt a little bit better to get moving. And then the last thing I'll probably say is safety should remain the highest priority. There was a lot of cases where when we operated out of the high school, we had kids starting to come back. In Asheville, we had more foot traffic rolling. So any way that we can keep our heads on a swivel and maintain that situational awareness within the mission of helping that vet team. And we also had equipment coming in this picture right here with a helicopter landing. We just want to make sure to talk and communicate and be there for folks. And that was kind of our role working those strike teams there. And then this last slide just offers a little perspective on the team effort. And even though we are under this is the vet team, we're a DAR, we made a lot of good friends as we were over there. We spent a lot of time together. But we can always have a little bit of fun, meet new people, meet the same mission objectives, and also post mission come back and have new contacts to communicate with those folks if they might need us again, or however we can support them that way too.
And for me, it was also just supporting that USAR search and rescue, trying to make sure that we can keep those canines in play so that bring some closures to families, and then as well get back out of there so the community can go ahead. And as we all know, and we hear many a times, any disaster that will start local and it will also end local. Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks guys. Appreciate that very much. We've probably got time for one or two questions for any of the speakers. So if you have a question, please go ahead and ask it. All right, sounds like y'all did a great job of presenting, and we certainly appreciate everybody and hope y'all have a great afternoon. And remember that the Extension Disaster Education Network is available and ready to help across the country. And we look forward to bringing you more webinars in the future. Thank y'all, and we'd like to thank the Extension Foundation team for helping us present today. Y'all have